This is Monterastelli. Welcome to the Tapping Q&A podcast, recorded live to tape from Williamsburg in Brooklyn. This is episode 291, originally aired November 1st, 2017. Hi, everyone. I hope this finds you well wherever you are and whatever time of day you get a chance to listen to this. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Today we have a conversation about how we can use tapping before, during, and after a catastrophe that is really large. Before we jump into that, just a quick reminder, we have a free 10-part guide on how you can use tapping to eliminate self-sabotage. All you need to do is go to tappingqa.com, click on the big blue button, and you can sign up for that 10-part guide. Every few days, we send you another part, so you're not overwhelmed with all of the information. It just comes a little bit at a time. Today, I have an interview with Gwenn Bonnell. Gwen has been on the podcast a number of times, and today's conversation came about because we had to reschedule our original interview. Gwen and I were scheduled to do a podcast. We hadn't settled exactly on what we were going to talk about, and we had to reschedule because Gwen got caught in the path of the hurricane as it went ripping through Florida. After we touched base after the fact, everything was great. But we realized that this was a great opportunity for us to talk about a process like this. So in this conversation, what we do is we talk about how Gwen tapped before the hurricane, during the hurricane, and after the fact during the reclamation process, as well as dealing with what had just happened. Now, even if you are not in a situation where you're dealing with something as big as a hurricane pouring down on you, something like this is really useful because anytime we're going into something that is stressful, overwhelming, unknown, this is a really great process to go through. And one of the reasons why I love talking to Gwen is every single time we have a conversation, what she does is she talks about things in a theoretical way, and then she gives really simple step-by-step processes that you can tap through. So even if this isn't something that's happening right now, going through these processes and knowing them are going to be really useful for you being able to tap in the future. So here is my conversation with Gwen. As a background, before we dive into the topic, why don't you just share with people where you live and what life has been like over the course of the last 4 or 5 weeks?
Okay, well, I live in South Florida, and we've had a number of hurricanes either go right by us or near us or come right over us. So I found myself with Hurricane Irma, in a rather precarious position because we had a Category 3, 4, or 5 heading right for us. We were straight on the line for us, and I had to go through the entire event of the before, the during, and the after. And actually what I really found the most traumatic was the before.
Okay. And why was the before of the three of those the most traumatic?
I think because I've been through so many hurricanes, I can't even name all the names, but this one, for some reason, because it was so strong and it was heading right for us, we had to make the decision early in the week, like on Monday or Tuesday, to either stay or leave. And at first we were going to leave, and we went out Monday to get supplies, and everything was backed up. Even the gas stations were running out of gas, and so we came home and said, because we are so far in South Florida, just to get out of the state would have been kind of a journey with gas stations running out of gas, and we didn't want to get stuck in the middle of nowhere with 2 dogs in the car with nowhere to go, with a hurricane bearing down on us.
Right.
So we changed our mind and decided to stay. And that was, for some reason, it really hit me. I think because of what happened in Texas, and we saw all that flooding, and I had already been through a storm this summer where our yard flooded more than it ever had before. And I found myself sitting down to write a to-do list, and I'm having a hard time writing. I'm actually using a pen, and I look down and my hands are shaking, really, really shaking. I'm saying, oh my gosh, I'm really getting overwhelmed here, not knowing if we made the right decision. Now I have a lot of things to do to take care of the house and get some supplies in, and the stores were out of water, and just everything hit me. And I didn't really have time to sit down and say, okay, I'm really overwhelmed with all these things and tap for every little thing that I was overwhelmed about, which if I would have had the time, I would have done. But my energies had to go getting this house ready and getting supplies. So what I did was I've been using something with clients and with myself. I did it when I had an overwhelming to-do list previously to this, and it came from a neuroscientist called Mark Waldman. He does this thing, he calls it a crap list, CRAP. And he actually works with high-level executives to get them to be able to focus more at work and be more productive. And he uses this with them. And it's CRAP stands for conflicts, resistances, anxieties, and procrastination, and any other problem that you think you might have. And so whenever I'm overwhelmed or my clients seem to be overwhelmed, I have them do this crap list, and I've adapted it to use tapping with it. And you just simply get out a piece of paper and start writing down all these thoughts going through your brain, because Mark Waldman says that when each thought takes up energy in your brain. You know, you have things firing across your brain and synapses and all these kinds of things. And when you have all those thoughts, it's like your brain is taking up so much energy, you're just in that freeze state where you can't do anything. You can't think straight. All your thoughts are scattered. And by just writing down all these crappy thoughts and feelings, all your worries, all your fears, all your doubts, whether they're real or imaginary, and getting them out of your brain and onto a piece of paper actually gives the brain the signal, okay, now you have them stored on the paper, so you don't have to have all these thoughts going through your brain anymore and actually burning out all your synapses. And what I found is that really works. You just write down, I sat there and I wrote down everything I was afraid of, everything I wasn't sure of, did I do the right thing, everything I thought I had to do to get ready for the hurricane, and everything, all my fears about what would happen. So
it's really interesting you talk about a process in that way. I use a similar process for really good ideas. Like whenever I get an idea for some content or something I want to do, I write it down. So my brain's not holding on to it. I never thought about doing it for the flip side, for getting those thoughts, those crappy thoughts that are floating around in there. And so when you're dealing with this, are you thinking in terms of conflict, resistance, anxiety, and procrastination, or are you just doing a data dump of all four types of things and you're not worrying about categorization when you're doing that?
I'm just doing a data dump, because when you have too much mental activity going on, you neurologically you get tired, mentally you get tired, psychologically you get tired. And I could also, not only were my hands shaking, but I could feel like the neurons frying like ping pong balls going back and forth in my forehead, in my forebrain. It was just too much. I just had too much. So you just dump it all out. And the thing is, when you're done with this piece of paper, you don't throw it away. Because if you throw it away, then the brain thinks, uh-oh, I forgot about this. I don't have this, and you start thinking of it again. So he says to keep that piece of paper. So that's an important thing. But what I did after I dumped everything out, then you take that piece of paper. And for me, it was like the front and the back and then another one. And you just kind of relax as much as you can. Look at the paper, but don't look at it to read it and analyze it and, and feel guilty about anything or question yourself about anything. Just look at it like another object in the room, like your coffee mug or, your phone, and just that way. And then what I did was looking at it line by line, and with each line, just reading the line and tapping on one point. And then the next line, reading that line and tapping on the next point. So I just went through the tapping without really saying anything, looking at each line that I wrote and going through the tapping process point by point by point by point. And that took about 5 minutes, 10 minutes. But after I did that, I felt so much more relaxed. My hands weren't shaking. My neurons weren't frying across the front of my brain. My head was clear. And what happened also as I was going through that, I realized that some of these things I wrote down aren't happening right now. It's like I'm projecting into the future what could happen, what might happen, what should happen. I'm beating myself up. Should I stay? Should I go? Did I make the right decision? Did I make the wrong decision? Which is just taking up way too much energy. And then I think a lot of it had to do with what happened in Texas, which, I'm not in Texas. I wasn't dealing with it at the time. It was just projecting the fears of what I saw happen on TV, to what could happen here. And so I realized I was I wasn't in the present moment so much. And I needed to be. And as that brought my energy back into the present moment, then I was able to look at the 2 or the 3 really important things I needed to pay attention to get my house and to get supplies in here to get ready for the worst of it, to live through it. And so I was able to do that. My mind was clearer. I was focused, and we were able to go out and get what we needed, and things, synchronicities started happening. The truck was driving out of the parking lot at the grocery store as I was going in, and there they are handing out water. So we got water, and that was one of my big fears. So it was really interesting. It was interesting to me as a 60-year-old woman that's been doing tapping for like 20 years and energy medicine and living through all these hurricanes, that all of a sudden this one affected me so much that my hands were shaking. That was the thing. It was like, whoa. Yeah. This never happened before, and I used this crap list with the tapping to calm myself down. It was really good.
And so was that something that you did multiple times in the days leading up to it, or was it that this doing it the one time was enough for you to get your head clear, to get what needed to be done, and then it was time to hunker down?
It was what I needed in the moment to get my head clear. And I had used it once before for myself when I had a really long to-do list and I was kind of paralyzed in front of my computer. I did it before, so I had done it before and I was familiar with it. And his instructions, though, Mark Waldman's instructions, are to write it down and to do it once a day for about a week, to really clear up a lot of stuff. And you'll find as you start writing, and then you'll start remembering other things as you start tapping, and just add them to the list, add them to the end of the list, go back to where you were tapping and continue. But he says to take, 5 minutes a day just to look at it. And he has different ways of relaxing. He has you yawning. He has you rubbing your arms, just bringing yourself into your body. But I find that tapping is probably one of the most useful things on the planet to bring you into your body and to calm your system and balance your energies.
So then once you got past that point and you got what you needed taken care of, you got supplies into the house, you got things prepared, what was the experience like once the storm made landfall and was making its way towards you and you were navigating all of that?
Gene, this wasn't that bad of a storm. I mean, I've been through worse, where the tiles are coming off the roof and it sounds like there's horses galloping on the roof. The worst part of this storm was that it lasted so long, and we were afraid of the flooding. But as soon as the water would get kind of close to the house, the storm would let up a little bit and it would recede. We have hurricane windows, so we can look out. We're not shuttered. So we could see what was going on. But it was long. It was from Friday afternoon until Monday morning was really the worst of it. But so I wasn't really so scared this time, but I can tell you what I've done previously, like with 9/11. That was really a scary time. We had just been in Pennsylvania and flew home the night before. We were supposed to be flying home the day of 9/11, but because we had dogs with us, the airline changed our flight. So we get home. We don't have anything in the house. It was a family reunion, so I was with my family. And I get in the car to go to the grocery store in the morning, and I hear the news. And I'm like, well, this is I thought it was one of those newscasters that like to make weird jokes about things. I said, this is not good. So my brother actually evacuated and called my mom when the first planes hit the tower, and that was 8:00 in the morning, and she didn't hear from him again until really late at night. So she was calling me. I had the TV on the whole time. I was tapping. Anytime I would feel an emotional upset, I was tapping. I mean, I just seen my brother 2 days before, and now we didn't know where he was, and he was actually, we found out, the lead of a evacuation group, so he was leading people out. But the entire day, all I did was tap when I would feel I was unpacking. I was getting the kitchen cleaned up or set up, and so I was out there with the TV, and anytime anything would come up, I would tap. So I pretty much was calming myself down while the trauma was going on. And what I really found was after that, we have a group of energy workers and therapists here in the area. Since I kept my energy straight and balanced throughout the day, I was able to work with a lot of other energy therapist and help them get their energy straight after the ordeal, because a lot of people just sat around and watched the TV without tapping. So I would say, if you're going through a hurricane, if you're going through something on TV that you're watching that's upsetting you, if you're going through any kind of natural disaster or stress or trauma in your life, do the present moment tapping. I mean, I pretty much tapped all day that first day of 9/11, and it really, really helped my energies stay balanced. It helped me to think straight during the day. It helped me calm down my mom every time she called. And that's what I would suggest, is just do present moment tapping. You don't even have to say anything. Just anytime you feel that emotion well up inside of you, just tap, and breathe. I hear breathing's really good for you.
Yeah, occasionally. I do that. I do that a couple of times every single day, just to make sure I get enough in. So then, once you get through something like this, be it something that is impacting you directly or something that we're witnessing from afar, but because of the nature of it is so overwhelming, what did you do in the aftermath, and what should folks do in the aftermath to make sure that we're dealing with the stuff that's residual, that's coming up new, that's all of that?
Okay. I'd say after any kind of traumatic event or something like this that totally turns your world upside down, the number one thing is to get stabilized. Okay, if you need if you need help, you've got to get help. Okay, but if you're the person helping, you've got to provide immediate relief, make sure they're safe, make sure they have what they need to live on, some place to live, water, electricity, things like that, and that they're stabilized. There's 4 tiers of trauma treatment, and the first tier is immediate relief and stabilization. The second is restoring energetic balance. And then the third is going in to repair any psychological damage. And the fourth is to help promote optimal functioning. So I'll give you an example. I mean, the immediate relief and stabilization really is very personal for people. It depends on, number one, how much time has passed since the event has happened. Number two, if this is a repeated trauma in their life, or they've been through a series of traumatic events or natural disasters in the past, in their recent past, it's probably going to be a little harder to get them through it, because they keep getting traumatized and they don't get a chance to reset. Their energies don't get a chance to reset. And also, third, how much has or has not been processed. When somebody goes through severe trauma, it's said that 95% of us are likely to have some signs of psychological distress. And 2/3 of us are going to recover spontaneously. We're not going to need really any outside help. Organically, we're going to be able to get through it. But 1/3 of us will have some kind of acute stress reaction, which could last for a month. And during that time, some of this also could recover spontaneously. And then after that, it's considered as post-traumatic stress disorder. Anything after a month, or could last for a year, could last for the rest of your life. And there's a really good disaster distress hotline online, because most of the people I work with are not sitting in my office. I'm on the phone with them, so I send people to this. It's a government website. The initials are S as in, it's SAM as in Sam, HSA.gov. And on that website, it's really good. It explains reactions that children might have, reactions adults might have, reactions that first responders might have that show they're having like an inordinate amount of the traumatic response, or they need help with it. They give you resources locally. You can actually talk to somebody. Like I said, it is a hotline. So if you have a teenager that's going through something, if you're a first responder, if you know anybody that needs any kind of help, it's really information rich and has a lot of resources that you can hook into in your local area. But other than that, I'll give you an example with 2 clients I had that had, one was a grandmother who had a granddaughter that was in the Las Vegas crowd for that shooting, and the other was a mother who had a daughter. And the girls survived. They didn't get hit. They saw people get hit, but they got out of there. But the difference between going right in and using tapping with somebody and knowing that somebody's not really ready for the tapping, because tapping sometimes brings up that traumatic event, and that sometimes they're not ready to relive that again. So the grandmother had been through a number of deaths in the family, other really tough events in the past couple of years in her life. She's been through a lot, and this was just like the last. The straw that broke the camel's back was her granddaughter being in that crowd. And she said she couldn't think. She was like I was, getting ready for the hurricane. She was questioning all the decisions she's made in the past 2 years, questioning life. And when I asked her, well, what are you feeling? She said, well, I'm not feeling. I don't feel anything. And I said, okay, but that's normal. Some people that go through a trauma or through a disaster, they need to step back a little bit and just let their body and their system kind of heal, and energetically we do this. We say, okay, we need to step back. We don't have the resources right now to go to relive the trauma and tap it out. We need to give ourselves time to rest, time to step back. And I said, that's normal. It's okay. It doesn't mean you're going crazy, at least not any crazier than any of others of us, But she was like, oh my gosh, she was so relieved to hear that. You mean this is normal? I said, it's just what you need to do right now. And instead of tapping, we just did some energy medicine. And I took her through some real easy, simple energy medicine things over the phone. And by the end of our session, you could tell she was more grounded. She was more centered. She was breathing better, just more relaxed. She was just in a better place. Now, the other woman that I was working with, whose daughter was in the crowd, she was really ready for some tapping. She was just really anxious about her daughter being safe. I'm a mother. I'm supposed to keep my daughter safe. I mean, she was just focused on that one thing. She hadn't had like a series of traumatic events over the past 2 years. This was it, and she was just focused on that. So we did tapping, and we got her through that with the tapping. So sometimes as a practitioner, you just have to say, what do they need right now? You don't want to re-traumatize them by bringing up something that they're not ready to deal with yet. Helping them adapt and letting them have their own way to adapt, to cope with a trauma. Sometimes being in denial is good for them, because they're able to just rest, step back, recover a bit, and let themselves recover enough so that they can get full resources a little later on. So it's just, being organic with them, knowing who they are, what's the situation they're at, and what they need in the moment, because you don't want to give them too much soothing. There's a somatic reaction some people have where they go into shaking and quivering like an animal would, and they're actually shaking it off. And I think research has shown that the people who do that are less likely to end up with PTSD, with post-traumatic stress. So if they're doing that, sometimes you have to let them do that and not stop them, because it's their own natural way of dealing with it. If it gets out of balance, if they're overacting or not, it's not healthy, you can tell it's not healthy, then step in, but people have different symptoms. People need different ways to cope, and you want to be careful that you're not stepping in and intervening where you don't need to, but also you got to step in and intervene when you do need to. I don't know if that helps,
Yeah, and I really want to draw a line under the point you made about the approaching someone with the resource set that is most useful in that moment. That we are kind, loving, helpful people and want to rush in and take care of everything. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're in that state. Or even when you do get the opportunity to start diving in and going after the real issue that's there, doesn't mean that we're going to stay with it till it's done. I mean, just because running 5 kilometers is good, it doesn't mean running 100 is 20 times better. That there's a certain point where we reach a capacity for us to be able to respond and heal, and sometimes it is that resting, it is that recovering, and that's what needs to happen, and we need to give folks to have the space to do that. So I really want to underline that point that you made, because for those of us who want people to be better right now, it's good for us to hear that and know that that's the case.
Right. It definitely, you've got to be empathetic. You've got to be sure you communicate that they're safe right now, no matter what happened. You know, they're safe because they're in a fight or flight reaction or a freeze reaction, and that's because they weren't safe or they didn't think they were safe. But you want to just kind of, you know, let them know you're there and read what they really need. It's just being intuitive, I guess, putting yourself in their place. And
the other thing is, I guess, just giving ourselves permission to recognize the fact that healing is a process. It's not a moment, but it's something that's going to unfold. And if we're looking for long-term lasting healing and relief, it's best that it's a process that allows it to be that, and it's not just some quick fix that quickly unravels.
Right. And I think a big part of it, too, is getting your ego out of the way. Not saying,
totally.
I know what to do here, you know, but really looking at hearing, feeling, listening, and approaching them, you know, confidently, but not pushing on them anything they don't need or would make them, you know, feel more unsure about themselves.
Right. Awesome.
Okay.
Excellent. Well, Gwen, thank you very much for kind of walking us through your experience and giving us some real practical tools the next time we find ourselves in a circumstance like that. I love interviews like that because they are so practical and so straightforward, and that's one of Gwen's real strengths. If you would like more information on Gwen, get a chance to listen to all of the podcasts we've recorded in the past, or just check out her amazing resources, all you need to do is go to tappingqandapodcast.com, click on the link for episode 291. You'll find all of her information. If you happen to be listening to this in the website, all you need to do is go down below the player and you will find her bio and her contact information. Also, at tappingqandapodcast.com, you can find our entire archive. There are amazing interviews. There's tap-along audios. There's instruction and step-by-step processes that you can use right now. All of those audios are sitting there absolutely free of charge. There is something that you could do some work on today that will make you feel healthier, that will make you feel stronger, that will make you feel more comfortable inside of your own skin. And there is a resource waiting there for you, free of charge, that can help provide that transformation. Please check it out. Also, if you know someone in your life who could use the information that we shared today, please be our ambassador. Don't spam your inbox and send it to every person in the world. But if you know someone that this information can make a difference, please pass it along. Because if their day is better, they are healthier, and everyone they interact with are going to deal with and receive the consequence of that transformation. It's an easy way to make the world a better place. So please just pass that along. If you have a question, if you have a comment, I love hearing from people just like you. Some of the best interviews we've ever done have begun because of topics or guest recommendations. Please let me know what's on your mind. You can always reach me at Gene, Gene, at tappingqanda.com. If you're on the website, up at the very top, click on the contact button. If you're in the Tapping Q&A app, you can click on the contact button. There you can leave me a voicemail message, or you can shoot me an email from right inside of your smartphone or your tablet. For the Tapping Q&A podcast, this is Gene Monterastelli. I hope you have a great day, and I will talk to you real soon. Bye-bye. The Tapping Q&A podcast is copyright Gene Monterastelli, Tapping Q&A 2016. All views expressed by guests are those of the guests and not necessarily of Gene Monterastelli or Tapping Q&A.